Here with the voice of the San Francisco 49ers, Greg Papa. Greg, how you doing at home? What's going on? You're looking great.
Yeah, I have not seen you since February the 2nd.
Wow.
A certain football game was played that day.
Sunday.
And it seems like I'm living in February the 2nd over and over and over again, and that's Groundhog's Day. So basically, I'm still doing my radio show every day on the flagship of the 49ers KNBR, and I'm doing a lot of stuff for NBC Sports Bay Area, talking 49ers football. So, yeah, the one thing, the league is going on. We'll see what happens in the fall, Keiana, but we are going to have a draft coming up. And I was excited about the draft when the 49ers were picking 31st, second to last in the first round, as opposed to last year when they picked number 2 overall. But then when they made that monumental trade, right when the new league year was starting to percolate on that tampering Monday to trade DeForest Buckner to Indy to get 13, I am very excited about the prospects of what they could do. So, yeah, we got more than a smidge. I think we got a lot.
We got a good chunk.
Talk about, yeah.
We got a good chunk of football to talk about. So with this chat, we're going to do a 49ers mailbag. 49ers fans have submitted their questions, and who better to answer them than the voice of the 49ers, right?
No, I think John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, go down the list. Al Guido, Jed York to be much more qualified, but they're not here. So
they're busy. They're busy preparing for the draft.
Yeah, right.
So we've got the next best thing.
Yeah, maybe, kind of, sort of, yeah.
With that, you just brought it up, so we might as well jump into the first question. Ryan Smith wants to know, do we need to replace Buckner in the draft, or is his replacement already on this roster? Greg, I'm going to toss this one to you.
Well, I would say yes and no. I mean, DeForest Buckner was a dominant player, arguably one of your top 2 or 3 players on defense, and certainly a centerpiece. But I do understand that trade. And to get the 13th pick back in the draft, and I have my own wish list for what they're going to do at 13. They also lost Sheldon Day, Keiana. He wound up going to Indianapolis to join DeForest Buckner on that line with the Colts. So I think the one guy that I'm looking for, I think a variety of people will wind up taking his. I think he had 877 defensive snaps last year, somewhere in there. I think I stole that note from you in 49ers.com. But anyway, maybe it's Mayoko. But I would say DJ Jones is a burgeoning star. We saw some games where he just flat out dominated the football game. That Green Bay game on the Sunday night, there were a few others. Even the game he got hurt in New Orleans, he was running around before the high ankle sprain making plays. So I think DJ and the base would join your group there. And what you would do, in my thought, would be, and a lot of it would be predicated on D Ford's health, but as long as D Ford is able to be in your base, you have D on one side, Nick Bosa on the other. You move Armstead inside. And this is just in theory. They're going to play all over the place, obviously. Armstead's a very good strong side base end as well. And then DJ in the base. Then when you get in the nickel, I'd like to see DJ become a 3-down player in this league. I think he has the ability because he's so explosive and quick. And that would lend itself to going after the quarterback. He shows up big time in the run game, holding his gap. And you got Solomon Thomas. You got a bunch of young guys that I think could mix in. But if I had to nominate one guy, it would probably be DJ Jones to start. And then I think it's time for Solomon Thomas to start wreaking havoc. Even though they traded 1 first-round draft pick defensive lineman, Keiana, they still have 4 on this team when you include D Ford as well.
I think it's also good to point out some of those lesser-known guys. I'm glad you brought up the name DJ Jones, but we can't forget about guys like Ronald Blair.
Totally.
IR was having an incredible season. Another name, Julian Taylor. Still waiting to see this guy. He could make a big impact next season. So those are also some of the names to look out for. So I agree. Yes and no. 49ers could look to seek a replacement in the draft, but they still have a lot of depth along that D line. Next question. Chris Marinos wants to know, what do you think are our top 3 needs to address that the 49ers must address in this draft?
Well, I would say wide receiver. Emmanuel Sanders' loss. He's a great player. There's no doubt how he improved the wide receiver room and Jimmy's numbers when he arrived. His very first game against Carolina, how good was he, scoring a touchdown on the first drive? The Halloween game in Arizona, he was just incredible. So you got to replace Emmanuel Sanders. I think Kendrick Bourne and Debo and a few of the younger guys could elevate, but you're talking about probably your number 1 guy. So I think you got to address that. I do think they got to get a little more youth in the offensive line. Joe's Staley situation is, we don't know right now. I think if they had won the Super Bowl, he may have retired. But now we don't know. It's a different world we're living in right now. How does he prepare for this? He had, 2 or 3 different injuries last year. But even if Joe comes back, you got to prepare for what you're going to do there. Weston Richburg at center has had a couple of injury ended seasons. So I think overall youth on the offensive line, and I would say everywhere. Right tackle you don't have to address. McGlinchey's solid there. I would not move Mike to left tackle. I don't think they would do that. But I think youth in the offensive line is going to be big. And then I think your cornerback situation. Sherm can't play forever. He may try, but you're going to have to upgrade there. And everybody in that, and I'd say a quartet, when you put Akello and Emmanuel Mosley in the mix and Kwan, none of those guys have contracts beyond 2020. So, you could sign a couple of these guys to lower deals, not huge deals. Emmanuel Mosley, you may want to do that right now. But I think you have to address specifically cornerback. I think they're okay at safety. You want to address everywhere. But I would say the areas would be probably wide receiver, getting more youth into the offensive line, and the cornerback position would be my pecking order.
That's perfect, because that brings me into the next question from Hugo Kaza. He wants to know cornerback or wide receiver with the 49ers first pick number 13 that they got from the Indianapolis Colts. Where do you think they go?
Well, tell me who went in the first 12 picks of the draft, and then I'll let you know. Okudah from Ohio State's gone, right? Jeff Okudah's gone.
I think he's gone
somewhere. If I can't get him at 13, I think I'd take him at 13. Is Jerry Jeudy there at number 13? Can I take him still? I love Jerry Jeudy. He's my favorite player in this draft. Okudah, I think the 3 best players in this draft are Joe Burrow, Jeff Okudah, and Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy is unbelievably just a veteran poise. I think he'll walk right in the NFL and play like an 8-year veteran. So assuming Okudah's gone, then I would say wide receiver. But I also think offensive tackle would be an interesting proposition. There are a couple of young guys that are going to be in this draft. Jedrick Wills out of Alabama, Wirfs out of Iowa, Becton, who was just a physical freak from Louisville. What a specimen he is. And Thomas from Georgia. So you'd have to, in order to make that call, we'd have to know who's still left at 13. But my wish list, and the moment I heard about the Buckner trade, is I thought immediately Jerry Jeudy. I mean, right in my mind, I went right to, wow, maybe we're in play to get Jerry Jeudy. That's how much I think of him. CeeDee Lamb's a great player. Henry Ruggs a good player as well. So if Judy's gone and one of the other ones are there, so it's a hypothetical, but you need more specifics. What names are we talking about in those positions?
I love that you said that. One of my own personal questions to you, I mean, when you hear about this wide receiver position, yes, it is a very deep wide receiver draft class. But when you think of the top 3 names, I can even throw in a top 4 name. You have the names of the Jerry Jeudy, the CeeDee Lamb, you have Henry Ruggs, and then also we'll throw in Justin Jefferson. Not sure if 49ers want to grab a guy like him at 13. But I was going to ask you, how do you rank these guys? And by the sound of it, Jerry Jeudy is your guy if he calls the 49ers at 13.
Well, I did 2018 season. I did the Iron Bowl on radio for Compass Media. I did Auburn, Alabama game. So I watched every snap Jerry Jeudy had going into that game, then watched him live. I was around the Alabama coaches and got a lot of intel on him. And I just became enthralled with him in every way. And then I was so obsessed with him that I watched just about every snap this year. The first game he played this year, incredible. The bowl game against Michigan. I think if you don't like Jerry Jeudy, I could see where you would question his physicality a little bit. That would maybe be the only thing I would look at. Amari Cooper is a light comparison, and I think he's better than Amari Cooper. But if you don't like Jerry Jeudy, you would look at the lack of toughness possibly, where I think CeeDee Lamb is a physically stronger player, and likewise for Henry Ruggs. But the way I look at it, Ruggs and Lamb, also, I'm not saying they're not going to be great players. I mean, I've heard the comparison with Ruggs of Tyreek Hill. I think we all have. We've heard CeeDee Lamb be compared to DeAndre Hopkins. Now, if those guys become those guys, then you're talking about explosive players. But the way I value it is if it's 3rd down and 3 or 3rd down and 4, and you're playing against a team, I don't care if they play a lot of zone. On 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4, you got to play man. You can't give guys cushion. You got to take that away. The guy that I would trust most running a route on those situations is Jerry Jeudy. I think his get-off ability, because of he's almost like a tap dancer. To me, he's closer to Gregory Hines than Hines Ward. I mean, he's just so fast getting off, and he's so beautiful to watch that way. I think he's a ready-made player in the NFL. The other guys could be good players. And if they're on the board, then you have a discussion. I've heard the 49ers love Ruggs. The 49ers love Lamb. The 49ers love Jeudy. They're all going to be Pro Bowl contending players. But my personal favorite is Jeudy, because I think he's most ready to beat NFL press man coverage, where I'm not sure Ruggs can do that. I think he's more of a move guy. And I think CeeDee Lamb, when I look at him against the Big 12 conference, they're playing so much soft zone. He's just running naked through a zone, and no one's on him. I do see him get pressed and he gets off of it, but I think Jerry Jeudy is the closest thing to a can't miss prospect in this wide receiver group.
We're talking about some weapons for Jimmy Garoppolo, but now fans have questions about the quarterback position. Brandon Harvey wants to know, although the 49ers are likely to stick with Jimmy G, do they draft a quarterback this year?
Well, I know there's a theory that you should draft a quarterback every single year. I've heard people like Bill Walsh make that comment. I don't know. I think as far as somebody coming in to unseat Jimmy or Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard, I don't see that. But the reality is there were reports that the 49ers turned down some draft capital to keep Nick Mullins. If there's somebody in the draft you're looking at, and I would say, take the top 3 guys out of it: Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Herbert from Oregon, and then Jordan Love would be in the mix. But somebody later in the draft, say they love Jake Fromm from Georgia, maybe. But you'd have to compare him to what you would get from Mullins, and if you would be willing to trade Mullins for some other piece. But by and large, I would say, I like the theory you should always have a quarterback you're grooming. But Mullins and Beathard are probably past the grooming stage. They're both ready to play and win right now. So I don't think it's a need. I think that may be something you may want to do. And we've heard some quarterbacks aligned to the 49ers that came in for, didn't come in, but Zoom visits that maybe you could sign right after the 7th round is over. And you're going to bring 4 quarterbacks to training camp. So, no, I don't think I'm looking at – now, if it's the 2nd round and Jordan Love is fallen or something, and you may be saying, wow, why is he sitting there? That's a different story. But if it goes pretty much what we think, those 3 guys, Herbert, Tua, Burrow, go early, Love goes somewhere, mid to late 1st round, then I don't think it's a need right now. I think you're – with Jimmy and Nick and CJ, Keiana, I think you're pretty solid for now.
All right. So going into the draft, 49ers now with that 13th overall pick have 7 picks in the draft. At Whiskey Niner 49 wants to know, which of the first 2 first-round picks do you think is more likely to be traded?
It depends on how it goes. I mean, if you have, say your 4th overall player in the draft is there at number 13. I mean, are you going to trade back? So you'd probably just take him at 13. But if the way things are going with the first 12 selections, trades, and people actually taking in their spot, if you're thinking, I could trade back a little bit, you've got teams like the teams that are rumored to be trading up are Tampa Bay at 14, Denver at 15, Atlanta at 16. So you got Jason Light, Tampa's GM. You've got John Elway, who obviously they all know really well. John Lynch knows him well, and Adam Peters knows him well. And then you got Thomas Dimitroff in Atlanta. If you could trade back from 13 to any one of those spots, 14, 15, 16, and still get the player you would have taken at 13 and be able to procure an extra draft pick, of course you do that. But I would think, just in theory, it'll depend on how it goes, that you'd probably pick at 13. And then that 31 pick is going to be really interesting because you're going to have, say Jordan Love is still available late in the round, right there. And somebody wants to trade up to go get him at that spot. And I think it's also a little more value in that spot, Keiana, because the first round are 5-year contracts. The second round are 4-year contracts. So you would have that player for an extra year just by taking him at 31 as opposed to taking him at 33. So I think that's a question you can't answer until actual draft day on April 23rd. And who's the 12 that have gone before. We can trade back, get our guy, or we're just going to take our guy at 13. I've often wondered with Jerry Jeudy, Keiana, of trading up to get him. I think about going up to 9 with Jacksonville and get Jerry Jeudy at 9 before the Jets and the Raiders are right in front of us, could take them at 10, 11, 12. There could be a run, 11, 12. There could be a run on wide receivers there. I thought about that. So I think that's just kind of let's wait and see what's going to unfold and see which way you go. But I think they're open to doing anything. But with 31, in theory, you could trade back. Remember, they don't have a second in the deep trade. They don't have a third or fourth because of the Emmanuel Sanders trade. They don't pick again to the 5th round. So just in theory, maybe you take 31 and jump back to get more picks. And you could do that again and again and wind up with 5 picks out of 1. So we'll see. But I think they're open-minded to doing anything. And it's like a football game. You wait and see what you're going to do by how the first drive of the game went, right?
It's a great point that you made. A lot of people talk about the 49ers trading down. No one really talks about the 49ers trading up in the draft, especially if one of those receivers that they have been eyeing are available and they can jump ahead of the Raiders. They can jump ahead of the Jets. So that's a really good point you made. All right, let's talk George Kittle. He's a fan favorite, but there was news this offseason that the 49ers reportedly were looking at tight end Austin Hooper, who ended up signing with the Cleveland Browns. So Scott Hansen wants to know, with the 49ers potentially drafting a tight end to fill roster holes and reduce Kittle's workload, what qualities do you think they're looking for? And are you aware of any prospects that might fit that mold?
Well, this isn't Scott Hansen from the Red Zone channel and NFL Network. I think at least might be another Scott Hansen. He knows more about this than I do. Yeah, Austin Hooper's a good player. Went to Stanford, Atlanta Falcon. I remember walking out with him at Levi's. He's the one that caught the pass in the end zone at the end that was overturned and no catch before Julio beat the 49ers. So I was not surprised by that. I think, you want to, in part, lessen George's workload. There's no doubt. But Kyle Shanahan is a matchup coach. So why does Kyle Juszczyk play so many snaps at fullback? Well, because he's an excellent football player and he's smart and he executes his assignment all the time. But he also is a mismatch because you get Kyle matched up with other slower linebackers. The same theory would be if we bring a second tight end on the field with George, and they're going to roll their coverage to 85. They're worried about Kittle. So if we get if you put Austin Hooper on the field with George Kittle and go with 2 running backs and have Juszczyk at fullback, the defense is going to counter with their heavy package. They're going to think they're going to slam it and run it, right? They're going 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends. No, we're not. We're going, they're all going to go out. We're going to go wide. They're all going to be detached. And now let's see your second linebacker match up with Austin Hooper. Good luck. So that's the kind of thing that Kyle does as a game planner where, if I put a wide receiver out there against your corner, that's an even battle. If I put a really good detached wide tight end and match them up with your linebacker, we're going to win. So I think that's just a scheme and how Kyle wants to play the ultimate master chessboard. There's some guys. One guy I would look at is Randy Moss's son, Thaddeus Moss. Is an interesting guy. I think the first thing you have to look at is tight end. Do they block well enough for Kyle Shanahan? There are a couple that I've looked at that I thought maybe not as much as an inline blocker to play tight end. But I look at Thaddeus Moss, bigger guy, He's got his dad's pedigree. I don't think he really knows what he's doing right now. But I think if you got him around, the whole group with Coach Embry and George and everybody, it could bring it out in him. I'm not sure they like him or not, but I do understand the thought process with Austin Hooper, Keiana and Scott. I do understand that because it would give you, yes, you could lessen George's role. This is a matchup league. And when the Patriots were at their best is when they had Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. Yes, that Aaron Hernandez. They were really difficult to deal with. And I remember when Harbaugh was coaching at Stanford, he'd have 3 tight ends on the field. And you'd have to match up with all 3 of them. They'd all be running vertical. So it's just a matchup deal. So I can't tell you exactly what tight end they'd be looking at, but I think that's a position, whether it be a really strong inline blocker, more of a wide tight end, or a detached guy that could do both. They like versatility. And so we'll see. We'll see what they do ultimately.
Lydia wants to know, what's up with Joe Staley's status? Last that we heard at the Combine, John Lynch said that from his talks with Joe, it sounds like he's coming back. Now, we don't necessarily know what those conversations might be between Joe and the 49ers front office, but I would assume they would be in constant contact, especially going into the draft and potentially drafting his successor. What do you say?
Yeah, I again, who knows? And they're not going to tell us. If they're going to say Joe Staley's retiring a week before the draft, then the 49ers may be taking a left tackle at number 13. They don't want the world to know that, so they're not going to say. But the bottom line is Joe Staley played hurt this year. It was the second game of the year when he had that knee injury in Cincinnati. He came back against Seattle on Clowney, got hurt again with a finger. It took him a long time to get full health. But let's face it, Joe is obviously closer to the end of his career than the start of his career. So the way you address this now is left tackle is something you have to look at. And I know they have Daniel Brunskill and Justin School on the roster, and they played well last year. But I'm talking about, a elite, and those guys are good players. They could be elite. They could be Pro Bowlers. But you got to be thinking along, and those guys get hurt. So you got to have a lot of them. You got Sean Coleman as well, who got hurt in the first preseason game last year, who's a swing tackle, could play both, but I think you'd like him to be the third tackle. So right now it's a huge question mark with Joe. But I think once you hear the R word, retirement, with any player, you've got to prepare for their eventual retirement. So you've got to have a succession plan in place, whether it's this year and you got to have it, or later. And any of these 4, we're talking about Wills and Wirf and Thomas and Becton. A lot of these guys, I think Becton maybe not, although he's huge. You could play them inside at guard. Even if you drafted him at 13 and Joe stayed, you could move him into guard. And then when Joe retired, you could kick him out to tackle. A lot of guys have made their career, great players, Hall of Fame players, started their tackle careers by playing guard initially. So you don't know, but I think you have to prepare that the end is relatively coming soon for Joe.
I'm glad you actually brought up that, because right guard is another position that will probably be one of those training camp battles, being that Mike Person is gone and the 49ers, they have guys that they could plug in there, but could be something that they also seek in the draft. All right. Last question. At 49er Fan 2001, not sure if you've been doing your research on linebackers. You got to look at it. We have Quan Alexander, who was, lost mid-season, but also came back in the post. Then you have Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. But if linebacker Isaiah Simmons is available at pick 13, do the 49ers take that route and grab him?
Wow. He will not be there at 13.
Wishful thinking, Greg.
In hell, he will be there at 13. I think he could go as early as 4 to the New York Giants. I think I've seen some mocks where they have him going 6 to the Chargers to pair him with Derwin James. I love Isaiah Simmons, but I'm very content with Dre and Quan, Aziz. I think they're fine there. I don't think they really have to do that. And I don't think they'll be in a position, and I would not advocate trading up to get Simmons. I love Simmons. I think he's an interesting guy. I don't know exactly where to play him. Part of me wants to just make him a middle linebacker with his long arms and just wreak havoc on all those crossing routes. But I think what they'll do with him in the NFL is what he did in college and use him even more Derwin James is a fantastic young player. And his injury, I think, derailed the Chargers last year. But this guy's got a chance. I'm not going to say he's going to be better, but I think he's just different. Where Derwin James is a safety playing in the box at times, and he can blitz, he can do anything. I think Isaiah Simmons is a linebacker who can play a little safety. He can go in the slot and cover receivers. It's like, wow. But I will be pretty confident in saying the 49ers will not have the ability to draft him at number 13. He will be long gone.
Let's say, Greg, just for fun, in a perfect world, 49ers could grab whoever they want at pick 13. Who are you going for?
Jerry Jeudy would be my choice. Could you tell by what I said earlier? Yeah, I do like Jerry Jeudy. I think, I'm not going to say he's Jerry Rice, but I do like that name, Jerry, and I'm not going to say he's not Jerry Rice. I just think if you put him with Debo and Kendrick and George Kittle and a running back and Juice, whoever you want, and you give Kyle Shanahan this guy and get him around Wes Welker and Miles Austin and Katie Sowers, and they coach him up. I mean, he looks like an 8-year NFL veteran Pro Bowl wide receiver right now. What's he going to look like when he really gets after it? And he was at Alabama, so he was coached at the highest level. But I just think he's so smooth and so terrific that way. But I would say they're going to get a good player at number 13. Losing DeForest Buckner was hard, Keiana, but they're going to get a difference-making player, whether it's a tackle, whether it's a wide receiver, probably not a corner at that point, but you never know. But if I had to have my wish, but believe me, the moment I got the alert right away, 49ers trade DeForest Buckner for Indianapolis' 13th pick in the draft, immediately, before I even shed a tear that Buckner was going, my mind immediately went, Jerry Jeudy. They got a chance to get Jerry Jeudy now. So I think I'm going with Jerry Jeudy.
I think the beauty of this draft, at least from my perspective, is that the 49ers are going into this with not as many holes as there have been in years prior. Their goal this offseason was to retain as many players as they financially as they possibly could. And they did that. And I mean, they technically could be that 1 or 2 or 3 playmakers, difference makers to return back to that title game.
Totally. We were 7-13 away from a Super Bowl. So, I mean, I know, you could look at the defense and look at other positions that would have got it done. But I think you're right. Jerry Jeudy is the kind of player that can put you over the top. And let's keep in mind, when the 49ers drafted Jerry Rice in '85, they were coming off a Super Bowl championship in '84. So, again, I'm not going to say Jerry Jeudy is Jerry Rice, but I'm not going to say he's not. So let's just see. But that would be my wish list.
Let's just see. Draft kicks off on Thursday, April 23rd. It's actually the day before my birthday, so I'll be celebrating regardless. So I'm excited to see what the 49ers do.
You turn 21 again?
Turning 21 yet again.
He's legal. He's legal.
Greg, this was absolutely a ton of fun. I think you and I should do this post-draft. Let's talk some of these picks. What do you think?
Whatever you want. Just bring the Rice jersey. I'm all ready to go. We're good.
Let's do it. Greg, pleasure having you. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk around the draft.
Thank you, Keiana. So good catching up with you and talking to the 49ers faithful.